We welcome State Senator Tom White from here in Omaha to the 1110 KFAB Good Morning Show, sponsor of LB 952, which was filibustered. Cloture vote failed yesterday, and that means we're going to be paying sales tax on that sewer separation fee to the tune of $325 million in the years to come. Senator White, good morning, and I guess we could sum things up by just saying, well, you tried.
Yeah, unfortunately, not just me, but there was a lot of bipartisan support. We had every senator except two in the metro area working with me, and it's what it should be. It's cross party lines, and that was nice.
All right, who's working against you?
Well, it's bipartisan too. Senator McCoy and Senator Howard, they worked to get, they helped the filibuster. Yeah. But everybody else was there, and a lot of senators not from the metro area, and they got it. You know, it's unfortunate we couldn't break our addiction to spending, and this is going to be a real burden on a lot of families and businesses. It gives me a great deal of concern.
Now, you may not be the most popular guy in Plattsmouth this morning.
Yeah, that was kind of interesting.
Yeah,
you know, it was,
tell the listeners who didn't know, because that all kind of developed after the show yesterday morning.
Yeah, well, here's what happened. Senator Pankinoon, this very honorable man, had mentioned that Plattsmouth, the only other city facing this kind of combined sewer problem in Omaha right now, didn't have to worry about this bill. And that didn't make much sense to me. So we investigated. We got their sewer tax bill, and they weren't paying sales tax on it. And so first a couple people on my behalf talked to the city administrator, and he said, oh, no, we talked to the Department of Revenue, and he said this is fine. And then the reporter from the World Herald, we talked to them, and they talked to him and confirmed that the Department of Revenue said it was fine. He had said it repeatedly. And so we went onto the floor with copies of their bills and a bunch of memos where the Department of Revenue had told us we have to pay sales tax in the metro area, but they had told Plattsmouth they didn't. And then all of a sudden, after some calls from the governor's office, this guy changed his mind.
So the guy with
the city administrator said, oh, it was just a big misunderstanding.
Mm-hmm. There's a guy sitting there in Lincoln who can decide which towns pay sales tax and what?
Well, you know, they say, the Department of Revenue says we never told them that. And the city of Plattsmouth administrator first said they did, repeatedly, to several different individuals. And then all of a sudden he changed his story. And he said, well, no, I talked to HDR, which is the mayor's old firm, and HDR and we had a miscommunication. But what was clear is Plattsmouth was not paying sales tax on their sewer fees, which is exactly what, you know, this bill was all about. How that happened, I'm really not sure. I just know that we really were careful and confirmed that Plattsmouth had talked to the Department of Revenue, and they repeatedly told us that, and then they changed their story.
Oh, I'm sure the bill just got lost in the mail. That's probably what happened.
What's this going to mean for Plattsmouth?
Well, they're going to have to pay sales tax, too, which isn't right.
Back taxes?
Yes.
Whoa.
That's why I said he's not the most popular guy in Plattsmouth, but, you know, it sounds like a case where everybody had good intentions, but the communications got messed up.
Yeah, apparently. Apparently, but the problem is not that the communications are messed up. I think the law is messed up.
Well, yeah.
But it's true, Senator, that this bill also would have cost Omaha about $50 million in sales tax revenue over the next 20 years or so. Is that correct?
Yeah, but I guess
it's a lot.
I have an issue when we phrase it that way. That assumes that money's Omaha's and the government's.
Well, I mean,
it belongs to the citizens. And here's the problem: if you need to raise $50 million in taxes. Don't raise $325 million and take it out of the economy, put it in the state so the city can get $50.
Oh, I'm good.
That makes no sense.
I'm good with that. I mean, I'm all about that. But, you know, the $50 million is basically budgeted for. You suggest we could have budget cuts in the city to overcome that gap. For example, where?
Well, I'm not an expert on the city's side, but it isn't budgeted for. They have not yet budgeted for that.
We got a $500 million pension liability out there, so it's budgeted somewhere.
Well, I mean, if you're using the term, do they have needs going forward? Certainly. If you're talking about actually budgeting and planning and where the money comes from, it's not. They haven't gone through the budget process yet for it. I mean, this money is going to come in over 20 years. There's no way it's budgeted for.
Well, technically, because each budget is an ad, but we all know there, unless Omaha is just going to sort of close up shop and move on down the road, there are going to be bills to pay from the city government for the next however many years. And so it's reasonable to assume that they're going to need the $50 million.
Well, there's no question that Omaha has huge financial needs, and they're good people down there, and they're under a lot of financial pressure. I get that. My biggest problem is that if Omaha needs to raise $50 million, don't send $320 million to Lincoln, because, guys, I know Lincoln. I don't know Omaha's city government. I haven't served there. I know Lincoln. We're not going to get it back. Yeah. Fellas, we're not. Yeah. And this is just not a good way to raise that revenue.
State Senator Tom White with us here from Omaha on 1110 KFAB. Does this mean the legislature is going to start looking at all the other sales tax exemptions that exist in the state right now and start eliminating some of those?
I don't think so. I mean, part of what was really concerning, if you go through the filibuster and you happen to read some of the comments, a bunch of senators who were leading the filibuster kept talking about how they had big projects of their own they wanted. One of the things we have a problem with is it's like, hey, listen, this is hitting the metro area. This is great. Yeah. $333 million, and I got some needs I want to spend out in the Panhandle or wherever. And that is really what we're looking at. A lot of it is, hey, not my problem, not my constituents. Right. Soak the city folk and spend it out here.
So it is accurate, and that was the last question I was going to have, and you already brought it in. This was another example of the urban-rural split.
Oh, I think so. Although we had some great rural support. Mm-hmm. I don't want to say it was 100% pure, but what we heard over and over again is we had these different projects, and they talked about projects in other areas. And they have legitimate needs, too. I just have a problem when one part of the state bears an unfair burden compared to other parts because the federal government has picked us.
Right.
That's just not good tax policy, folks. We ought to all be in this together, share the pain together, and that's really the best way to control spending and to be disciplined in government. When you think you can tax somebody else and spend it on yourself, man, that's a recipe for a lot of bad results.
State Senator Tom White with us says this is dead for this year. Is this probably dead in the future then, too?
I don't know. The legislature changes, and one of the things that's going to be very interesting is when we redistrict. Yeah. In 2 years. I had heard, I think, on the radio, it might have been you guys, that 52% of the population now lives in Sarpy, Douglas, and...
That was us.
And Lancaster. Well, you know what? That's the world changes, guys.
Yeah, it does. Hey, Senator, have a good one. Thanks so much for your time this morning.
I really appreciate it. Always fun to talk to you, fellas.
All right. State Senator Tom White with us on the Good Morning Show.